The payment showed up at 3:47 a.m. No warning, no explanation, just zeros where 6 figures used to be. Linda Vargas had been a night shift nurse for 11 years. She knew the rhythm of the hospital after dark, the hum of machines, the shuffle of exhausted residents, the families who couldn't leave. But she'd never seen anything like this. The Dawson family had been there for 6 weeks. Their daughter, Emma, 9 years old, had been struck by a drunk driver on her way home from soccer practice. Fractured spine, internal bleeding, 2 surgeries. The bills kept climbing. Linda had watched Emma's father for 6 weeks. Same wrinkled shirt, same trembling hands when he held his coffee. 2 days ago, she'd seen him in the chapel, staring at the donation box. He'd pulled out his wallet, 3 crumpled dollar bills. He'd put them back. Emma's mother hadn't left the ICU in 11 days. Her wedding ring was gone. Sold, Linda guessed. Her eyes were hollow. But every night at 9 p.m., she'd sit by Emma's bed and hum the same lullaby. Emma couldn't hear it, but her mother sang anyway. 3 days ago, the hospital administrator had pulled the parents into his office. Linda wasn't supposed to hear, but the walls were thin. The insurance had maxed out. They needed $72,000 by Friday, or Emma would be transferred to county care. The father's voice cracked when he asked for more time. The administrator said there was none. That was Monday. This was Thursday. 3:47 a.m. Linda stared at her computer screen. The balance on Emma Dawson's account read 0, paid in full. She refreshed the page. Still 0. The transaction log showed one entry, 3:41 a.m. handwritten note, hotel stationery, the Beverly Wilshire, but the signature made no sense. It was illegible, a looping scrawl that could have been anything. Linda zoomed in on the scanned image. She recognized the logo. Her sister had worked there in housekeeping for a decade. Linda printed the note and walked to the billing office. The night clerk, Marcus, was half asleep over a crossword puzzle. She dropped the paper on his desk. She asked if he'd processed the payment. Marcus squinted at the note and confirmed he had. The envelope came through the drop box around 3:30. Someone left it with cash. $72,000. In hundreds. Linda's hands went cold. She asked who delivered it. Marcus pulled up the security footage on his phone. The video was grainy, black and white. A man in a fedora and a long coat approached the billing drop box, slid in a manila envelope, and turned away before the camera caught his face. His hands were gloved, white, like he was performing surgery or something else entirely. Linda watched the clip 3 times. Something about the way he carried himself felt familiar. She couldn't place it. She went back to her station and called her sister. She asked if the hotel kept records of guests who checked in that week. Her sister said they probably did. The hotel had been a ghost town that week due to renovations. Only a handful of guests. If someone was using their stationery, they either stayed there recently or knew someone who did. Linda thanked her and hung up. She pulled up the Dawson file again. Emma's accident had happened on a Tuesday evening, 6 weeks ago. The driver who hit her had fled the scene. No arrests, no witnesses, except one. A bystander had called 911. The dispatcher's log noted that the caller stayed on the line until the ambulance arrived, then left before police could take a statement. Male voice, calm, gave precise location and injury details, refused to give his name. Linda's pulse quickened. The anonymous caller had described her injuries with near medical accuracy: collapsed lung, spinal trauma, internal bleeding in the abdominal cavity. Whoever made that call knew what they were looking at. What she found next stopped her cold. She opened the hospital's visitor log. Most ICU patients had a short list: immediate family, maybe a close friend. Emma's log had one additional entry, dated 3 weeks ago. No name. Just a note from the front desk stating that a visitor had requested to see the patient. Family was unavailable. The visitor left flowers and a card. The flowers were still in Emma's room. Linda had seen them every night, white lilies in a crystal vase tucked in the corner by the window. She went to Emma's room. The girl was asleep, her breathing steady under the oxygen mask. Linda checked the monitor. Vitals stable. Emma's eyes opened for a second. Glassy, confused. She looked at Linda and whispered when she could go home. Then she drifted back to sleep. Linda's chest tightened. She picked up the card from beside the vase. It was handwritten. The same looping scrawl from the payment note. The message told Emma to keep fighting. It said someone was watching over her. No signature. Linda's hands trembled. She took a photo of the card and sent it to her sister. She asked if the handwriting looked familiar. Her sister replied 2 minutes later, asking where Linda had gotten the image. Linda said it was from the hospital and asked why. Her sister said she'd seen that handwriting before, on autograph requests, from the hotel. They used to get them all the time when certain guests stayed there. Linda's breath caught. She asked what guests her sister meant. Her sister didn't answer right away. When she did, her message was short. Celebrities, the kind who don't want to be recognized. Linda sat down. Her mind raced. The fedora, the gloves, the way the man moved in the security footage. Smooth, practiced, like someone who'd spent a lifetime avoiding cameras. She pulled up the 911 call transcript again. The dispatcher had noted that the caller remained calm under pressure. Mentioned he was passing through and didn't want to get involved. Passing through. The timeline didn't add up. The Beverly Wilshire had hosted a private charity event 6 weeks ago, the same week as Emma's accident. She found the event listing online. A fundraiser for children's hospitals. The guest list was private, but the event photos were public. She scrolled through dozens of images. Ballroom shots, champagne toasts, a stage with a podium. Then she saw it. In the background of one photo, partially obscured by a curtain, stood a man in a dark suit. He wasn't facing the camera. His head was turned toward the exit, but his silhouette was unmistakable. The same build, the same posture as the man in the security footage. Linda zoomed in. The image was too blurry to make out his face, but pinned to his lapel was a small gold ribbon, the emblem of the charity hosting the event. She checked the charity's website. Their mission statement said they provided medical care to children in crisis, no family left behind. Linda leaned back in her chair. The pieces were falling into place, but they didn't form a picture. They formed a question. She went back to the security footage, watched it again. This time, she focused on the man's hands. When he slid the envelope into the drop box, his left hand lingered for a fraction of a second. The white glove caught the light. Sequined, unmistakable. Her heart stopped. She'd seen that glove before. Everyone had. It was iconic. She opened a new browser tab and searched for images. Found what she was looking for in seconds. The glove was famous. It belonged to one person. Then the guard remembered something. Linda found Jerome on his break, sitting outside the emergency entrance with a thermos of coffee. He'd worked hospital security for 15 years. She told him she wanted to ask about the night the envelope was dropped off. Jerome nodded. Quiet night. Just him and the graveyard crew. Linda asked if he'd seen the guy who left it. Jerome said not up close, but he saw him leave. The man walked past him on his way out. Moved fast, not running, but purposeful, like he didn't want to stick around. Linda asked if he'd said anything. Jerome shook his head. The man didn't speak. But when he passed under the light by the entrance, Jerome saw his face for a second. Just a glimpse. He looked tired, but calm, like he'd just finished something important. Linda asked what he looked like. Jerome thought for a moment. He didn't remember much. The hat, the coat. But he did remember the eyes. They were dark, deep, the kind of eyes that had seen a lot. He paused. Then he said that when the man walked past him, he swore he heard him humming, real soft, like a melody. Jerome didn't recognize it, but it stuck with him. Linda thanked him and walked back inside. She stood in the hallway, staring at the doors to the ICU. Emma Dawson was still asleep. Her parents were in the waiting room, holding each other, whispering prayers of gratitude they didn't fully understand yet. The payment had cleared. The debt was gone. The little girl would stay. Linda sat in the dark, staring at the screen. The glove, the charity ribbon, the 911 call, All of it pointed to one name. Michael Jackson had been there. Not for cameras, not for applause. He'd seen a little girl fighting for her life, and he'd made sure she got to keep fighting. The Dawsons would never know. And maybe that was the point. Linda never told anyone what she'd found. The handwriting, the timeline. She didn't need to. Some acts of kindness weren't meant to be explained. They were meant to be felt. Years later, she still thought about that night. The man in the fedora, the envelope full of cash, the way he'd vanished into the early morning without a trace. She didn't know why he'd chosen that family. She didn't know how he'd known they needed help. But she knew one thing for certain. He'd cared, and he'd made sure no one would ever know. The story didn't end with the payment. It ended with a question Linda asked herself every time she walked past Emma's old room. If someone saved you in silence, would you ever stop wondering?